Let's get one thing straight. The riots, the violence, and the vandalism in Portland and Seattle are not peaceful protests. Setting fire to a federal courthouse is not a peaceful protest. Using high-powered lasers to permanently blind law enforcement officers is not a peaceful protest. Hurling projectiles, including bricks and chunks of concrete at police, is not a peaceful protest. Blocking traffic and harassing innocent drivers is not a peaceful protest. Bringing Molotov cocktails to public gatherings is not a peaceful protest. Pulling a gun on a driver is also not a peaceful protest. Firing an AK-47 into the car of a driver who refuses to cave to your anarchy is not a peaceful protest. Setting off mortar blasts that result in law enforcement suffering concussions is not a peaceful protest. Vandalizing property, destroying businesses, looting, and terrorizing communities in the name of Black Lives Matter is not a peaceful protest. And no, contrary to Congressman Jerry Nadler's absurd claim that all of this is made up, this horrific violence is not a myth. You saw the videos for yourself. What's happening in Portland and Seattle and in cities across our nation is domestic terrorism. According to the U.S. Department of State's 2003 definition of terrorism, terrorism is defined as, and I quote, premeditated, politically motivated violence perpetuated against non-combatant targets by subnational groups or clandestine agents, usually intended to influence an audience, end quote. Domestic terror, of course, is terror attacks committed in the perpetrator's own country against their fellow citizens. This is what's happening in Portland. And the violent radicals, the rioters committing the acts of terror in Portland and Seattle, admit they're terrorizing the community with a political agenda. The Black Lives Matter movement, the group, the organization, admits that their founders are trained Marxists. The Black Lives Matter founders and leaders admit they're anti-police, anti-white, anti-free speech, anti-capitalism, anti-family, neo-Marxist revolutionaries who threaten violence if they don't get their way, if their Marxist political ideology is not imposed on the United States of America. This is what you're seeing in the streets of Portland and Seattle. It's not a myth. It's Molotov cocktails and loaded rifle magazines and arson and assault and laser beams blinding police officers. This is a waged cultural revolution with Marxism as the goal. It's not a peaceful protest, it's an insurrection. And anybody who tells you it's just a peaceful protest is lying.